name is Raymond Aqua. Now, one person has turned himself in as police continue investigations into the Wednesday's attack by some angry youth on the Glorious World Power Church following death prophecies by Rev.Bempah. Of course, what is currently happening is also that the umbrella body of the charismatic ministries across the country have issued a statement. We'll be speaking to the president of the GPCC pretty soon to understand exactly what the crux of their statement is supposed to be. We will also be getting some fresh perspectives on what at all can be done. How can we marry the prophetic ministry in the country and the chaos that's recently resulted from the New Year prophecies with what's supposed to be a secular state's quest to deal with these issues in a more sustainable manner? I'm sure you would recall that, of course, I mean, the suspect that I'm talking about who's helping the police in doing some form of understanding of what really happened and how the rest of the people could be raised and dealt with more appropriately. After this break, we'll converse actually on the most important issues on our front today. You welcome back. This is Upfront. My name is Raymond Aqua. As I did tell you, this conversation today is supposed to have the fullest appreciation of what's really happening on the ground. Pretty soon, we'll be going on the phone line and speaking to the president of the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Churches. The Reverend Professor Frimpong Manso is also the man in charge of the Assemblies of God churches across the country. We should be able to appreciate exactly what's the crux of their statement. A statement recently issued stipulates that they do not think the conduct of some of these pastors are in the right direction. What they are saying is that it will not be true to come to pass. In fact, they have criticized the announcement of their prophecies about some prominent Ghanaian and, again, they say self-styled prophets. The council, which is the umbrella organization of over 200 Pentecostal and charismatic churches in Ghana, they actually issued in a statement today. So we'll be going to the phone lines and getting to speak to them more about what they mean by the doomsday prophecies not coming true and whether or not there's some discord on the front of Christianity pretty soon. And if the Reverend Professor is on the phone lines, we should be able to get to appreciate some of these things. Reverend, you're welcome.
Thank you, Raymond, and Happy New Year.
Yes, and Happy New Year to you too. We probably did not start the new year on a good note, and maybe our condolences to the member of your team and one of your churches who lost a pastor in that particular case.
Yes, in Tema Community 4.
Yes.
Very, very sad.
Now, we can proceed in that particular direction and now get to appreciate this. The statement that the GPCC has issued is virtually saying to the Reverend Bempah in the face that your conduct is wrong, we do not approve of it, and we cannot support it. Is that so?
Yes, thank you, Raymond, once again. I think it might be a response to the prophecies that has come from that reverend and, of course, other ministers, but we are not targeting him as an individual because this prophetic move in Ghana has been a malice. It's really more functioning and it's creating problems. We believe in prophecy. Prophecy is biblical, and God speaks to man. In fact, prophecy has got two components: foretelling and forthtelling. That is, forthtelling current events and foretelling future events. And of course, God uses men. But prophecy will be either for a nation, for individuals, or for a particular group. And Ghana is a secular state. And so in the Old Testament, prophecies was for Israel as a theocratic nation. And today, the nation that receives prophecies from God is the church, which is made up of different people from different tribes who have made a holy nation. So a prophecy will come to encourage, exhort, edify the church, or the church relationship to the world, or the world relationship to the church. So it will not come in a vacuum that somebody is going to die or not to die. It doesn't come that way. Has a person done anything to the church or against the church? And the prophecy, is it going to be beneficial to God or is it going to be beneficial to the church? Any prophecy has got a significance. The significance is to glorify God first. and foremost, and to warn or direct or guide church people. So whenever there is a prophecy that does not glorify God, that does not guide or direct the church or direct people of God into godliness, then there is something. So the GPCC found very, very strange that there is a spirit of prophets who have been prophesying mostly about death or that kind of events. Generally, see what happened last Wednesday, was it yesterday? It brought pandemonium and panic and even destruction of churches. Does this prophecy actually glorify God? And of course,
Forgive me, but this will not be the first time that the Apostle Rev.Bempah or any of the people that have been delivering some of these prophecies have done so. The fact that they single out a leader of a sect does not necessarily warrant any form of attack in this case. And I'm not sure you are indirectly supporting really, or saying that that is warranted.
Raymond, thank you very much. We condemn the attack of the Muslim youth on the premises and the properties of Prophet Rev.Bempah's church. Ghana is a law-abiding country. There's rule of law. Whatever he said, two wrongs doesn't make right. So they could have seek redress in a different dimension. And whatever they did was barbaric on Islam, I would say. And thank God the chief imam, being so matured and spiritual person, has even asked that they forgive him and that he is rather praying for him. So the chief imam has shown leadership and spirituality, which everyone should rather emulate. So we do not, as GPCC, support the actions of the Muslim youth, inverted comma. But we do not also support personal prophecies against individuals. Should God give you a word to somebody, it should be personal and private. In fact, I didn't even develop my argument to that place. But
okay. Yeah, because that's the point I'm seeking to explore from you. If God tells the very individual, being the prophet in this case, go tell it in the church, does the person have any act at all? Can the person in any right seek to modify this particular prophecy? And in this case, we are talking about direct words from God, except you want to say that God cannot and will not do such a thing.
We see God is not an author of confusion. David even sinned against Uriah and killed the wife. Prophet Nathan went to David in private, and he was very mature in the way he even spoke to him. King Hezekiah was about to die. God sent a prophet to him. It was private. You know, anything that comes to the public should be for edification, comfort, and encouragement. So personal prophecies are not for public consumption. They are actually for private, and then you share with the person, and then you pray with the person. Sometimes you do not even need to talk to the person. As a spiritual leader, you take it, and you rather intercede on behalf of that person, that God should not do this. But if prophecy is for public display, it creates panic. So we, the GPCC, we believe in prophecy, but we believe in them. There should be a discreet and a decorum, a manner that should be presented so that the good should not be meant for evil. So it's very, very unfortunate, actually. It's very, very unfortunate for what has happened. As for the content of the prophecy, be it true or untrue, I don't want to judge that, except that let Ghanaians pray. Should it be true? Should it be from God? We can pray and ask God for mercy and ask God, to change the situation, because God reveals to save. He reveals to change. He reveals to direct. And the prophet said he's asking Ghanaians to pray. So I'm not questioning its authenticity, but I'm saying that if it even be true, the manner in which it was broadcasted or displayed in the church was not the best way.
Okay, now let me understand this a lot better. You are saying that the content of it doesn't matter. You are dealing with the mode of delivery of this particular message. But to be clear,
Well, somebody has said
yes,
God has spoken to him. Of course, the Bible says, let the prophet speak 2 or 3 and let others judge. It means prophecies are under spiritual authority. So if he were to be under my authority, I would have said something. You know, in churches, they have churches hierarchy, churches leadership. I am in the GPCC. So if it were for GPCC church, any GPCC church, I could have said something. But he is not really under my spiritual authority or covering. And he has not come to ask for my mind. And, you know, these things, if you don't take care, it will be like fighting one another. So I'm saying that he is saying God has spoken to him. He has prophesied. So let us wait to see what happens next year, next 2 years, or next 3 years to see whether it is a true or untrue prophecy. But for me, if it is true,
okay,
what we can do is to pray so that it doesn't get fulfilled.
And to be clear, that was the same admonition that he gave. He gave a similar admonition that we should pray about all of these things he said. But many are saying that the stance of groupies like yours are very, very contradictory. When he prophesied who was going to win the election in 2016, I mean, many of you did not complain.
I condemned it.
He consistently has prophesied about similar events too. It looks like the only problem you have is because it crosses the faith line in this case.
Oh, Raymond, I have always condemned prophecies for elections and this kind of things. I have been on Joy TV, if you can even play by some of my YouTubes. I have believed that prophecies don't go to that realm. Who wins elections and who loses elections? What is the benefit of it to the church and to the people of God? Mm-hmm. So it is true that because of the actions of the young Muslim, it has escalated. Probably because some of the things that we say, it doesn't catch the media attention. But for me, I have been so much worried about the so-called prophetic ministry and the prophetic gift that is going on in Ghana. I have said, if you allow me 2 minutes, before you accept any prophecy, before you come even to the content, look at the prophet's character. His character. To weigh it, whether it is biblical, and then see whether he's under authority. These 3 things, if he doesn't have a character, it is not in line with the Bible, and if he's not under authority, reject that prophecy outright. You don't need revelation to say that it's from God. I think what I've said is enough. You don't need any revelation. If a man of God has got no character, he has no right to prophesy. If the prophecy is not in line with the Bible, throw it away quickly. And if it's not under authority, Jesus himself said, I am a man under authority, hupo exousia. So whenever somebody just become a self-star and is not accountable to anybody and is proclaiming to be a man of God, Raymond, just laugh that person off. That's why we are suffering in this country. Too many people claiming to be men of God and creating panic.
Because this is becoming too much. Prof, the claim by some is that regulate that space. They are becoming too rampant. It is becoming too much. They are causing chaos. And the reaction that you got in this case is one of the examples that shows that it's high time we did regulation. Do you agree with that claim?
I agree to that. It's better late than never. In fact, recently, a few months ago, we met the president at the Flagstaff House and we brought this idea. And currently, head of churches and we are planning to come out with a charity commission that will regulate all religious bodies and see how we will not cause harm or disturb the peace of the people. In fact, some of the religious leaders are actually abusing people's human rights.
I see.
And they are exploiting people. There's so many negative things in the name of religion. And I believe it's about time we don't hide ourselves under the freedom of religion to dupe and to destroy people.
Finally, when you say regulation, some are saying that, for example, the prophet Rev.Bempah and others who have given similar prophecies ought to be brought to book. Is that the kind of regulation you're also advocating?
No, I'm talking about preventive measures. You
can't prevent the prophecy in this case. Let's be clear.
That will not
you cannot prevent the man of God from saying that this is what God tells me.
No, preventive measure doesn't mean we are preventing him from saying, see what is happening in Rwanda. In Rwanda, you have to study and even have a minimum degree. You have to belong to a recognized institution, a recognized religious body. So there are a lot of rules that govern.
You want us to do a similar thing here? Some have argued that, I've not seen a politician who had to hold a political science degree before they venture into that particular field. Is it not too murky an area for us to step in and seek to regulate when people have spiritual and religious freedoms?
Well, religious freedom should be regulated, but not abused. I don't have the words. I think Karl Marx has said religion is the opium of the people.
Yeah.
So people will die for religion.
Okay.
Their life is for it. So anybody can use religion to destroy, but also to build. So we should not allow things go anyway. So to me, there should be parameters. At least.
And you suggest the Rwandan way?
No, that one is too harsh.
Oh, I see.
I cited an extreme example.
I see.
So it's like swinging of a pendulum. Ghana is on the extreme end. Rwanda is on the other end. There should be balance.
I get your point.
PNDC law 211 did not work, and it will never work. So we have to work. We have to reason to come out in a way that will make us coexist, exist in peace and protect. Religion should protect the vulnerable.
I get your point.
Protect the weak, but we are now rather exploiting them, and we are not protecting them. We are rather destroying them, making them more. I don't even have the words. You know my heart and my spirit and my passion.
Well, I think I have to thank you for now. I appreciate your time with us. The Reverend Professor Paul Frimpong Manso is actually the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Churches Council. He's actually the president of that grouping, and they have over 200 institutions under that particular grouping. And he was sharing some thoughts with us on the statement they issued, asking and demanding that prophecies of such nature that talks about the national chief imam, that talks about the vice president, the president of the Republic of Ghana, should be delivered to the individuals and not be made like public commentary on any other matter. We shall be dealing with this matter because, of course, I have a wonderful set of people here in the studio. My very first, very closer to me, and don't get it wrong, his name is Apostle Raymond Akwa. He's the General Secretary of the Perez Chapel. Of course, he has my name. That's to be fair. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Raymond.
I hope you are doing well this evening.
Very well, Raymond.
And on my far left is also a member of the Peace Council.
Well, I'm not a member of the Peace Council, but a spokesperson of the Chief Imam.
Okay, so the spokesperson of the Chief Imam in this case, and we are talking here about Sheikh Arimiao, but there's a third one that...
Shaibu, not Anas, but Shaibu.
No, I know it's not Anas, but I was giving the understanding that you could equally be called Schwab.
Oh, yeah, but Schwab is the pure Arabic pronunciation, but this one is an African pronunciation that we...
So Shaibu is fine.
Shaibu is okay.
All right, so that's wonderful to know. So we can converse a conversation on this one. Let me start with you, Apostle Raymond Akwa. This is becoming, virtually every year. On 31st night, when we are seeking to cross over to a new year, we've heard several men of God tell us what's going to happen in the new year. Indeed, I know people who go to seek the direction for the new year. But it's becoming fashionable for some time that some men of God make it their duty to go out there to say the people and the major events are likely to happen. So this year, I've heard we're not going to win the AFCON. I don't know if we should go in the first place. And that's serious. I've also heard, and I've heard those of Prophet Emmanuel Bedikobi. I've heard those of Prophet, the very recent one, is Prophet Isaac Rev.Bempah. I've heard the Eagle Prophet from Kumasi making some of these other projections into the year. And again, if by stroke of coincidence or reality, some of these have come to pass before. One, the prophet Emmanuel Bedukobi talked about hardship and other things. The reality is that the 2018, many complained about hardship too. Some of the things he said were going to happen has been deemed real and has happened before. Again, others have also stated similar things happening. I remember one, Prophet Nigel Gazy. He's equally said things that have happened with evidence of tapes to support him. What the Ghana Pentecostal Council is saying is that you cannot deliver a prophecy meant for an individual to the public. Is this biblically supported? Is this not restricting the space within which people can say, of course, we have religious freedoms too, people can express themselves too?
Well, Raymond, let me say, first of all, a Happy New Year to you and my senior over here and the entire viewers watching us right now. I think that I heard a bit of what the very good Reverend Professor spoke about, and I share almost in the views of the things he said, in the sense that, like you rightly asked at the beginning, at the beginning of every year, we seem to get prophecies upon prophecies. Is it necessary at all? I think that to a very great extent, we can't delete prophecy and prophets from the space of Christianity. Now, when you read the Bible, Ephesians chapter 4, it talks about God giving gifts to men. And it talks about the fivefold ministry made up of apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. And so each and every one of these ministries have a role to play in the space of Christendom. And so we can't take one out. In discussing prophecy and prophets, I'm always conscious or careful of the fact that we can't throw out the baby together with the bathwater.
That's true.
However, we need to draw a very fine line, because obviously we are seeing some excesses which is uncalled for. But we must also put it in perspective that this has been the case from time immemorial.
That's true.
In fact, when you read the Bible, in the days of Moses, there were people like that. In the days of Jesus, we had people like that. In the days of Paul, we had people that were deemed to be either false prophets or alarmists and stuff like that. And so we should understand where we are coming from so we can appreciate where we are going. Now, in this time and age, what we are seeing, people giving prophecy at the end of every year, isn't necessary. I think to a large extent, it is necessary. But let me put that in context. It is necessary to the extent that as a Christian, I wake up every morning and commune with God to receive a word from God to start my day. So in reading my Bible, God directs me or God gives me guidance and stuff like that. That is God, that is like a prophecy. All right? And so in every season and at every time, God speaks to his people, gives us direction, and gives us assurance. And that is what religion is all about, man communing with God. And so for me, there is nothing wrong when at the beginning of a year, God gives us a word and says that this is how the year is going to be. However, we must be careful and we must be attentive to what kind of word do we receive. How do you start your day, for example? And you do your devotion, and the thing God tells you is that I'm going to kill you today. You are going to have an accident. Your father will die. Your mother will die.
Is that incomprehensible? Is that not possible?
I think that as we go along in the discussion, we have to make some things clear. You see, dispensations are very, very important. And I've heard a lot of people talk about the fact that in the Old Testament, the prophets used to give prophecies about death. And one of the popular ones that has been spoken about is Prophet Ezekiel. You know, and stuff like that. But you can't just take things out of context and use them. Now, we are no more, I mean, Ghana is not a theocratic state where we say it is a rule of God. Ghana is a secular state. And so let's assume, for example, that a prophet gets up this morning and says that, well, this is what God is telling me all of us must do. And because it's a secular state, you have people of other religions. I'm a Christian. My senior brother or uncle here is a Muslim. And so if my God says that today this is what the direction we should go left. And then he comes and says his God says we should go right. What happens then?
And to be fair, even within Christendom, I've heard some contradictory prophecies too. Well, so, for example, one says, this guy is going to win the election. The other says, no, another person is going to win the election. It's not confusing to me, who is just seeking to consume what's being put out there.
Because you see, there again, like I'm saying, we need to have that understanding. What is New Testament prophecy and what is the New Testament prophet's rule all about? If we don't get it right, we will set confusion all over the place, which may not be necessary. And it is time, and I'm happy now the nation is talking about this.
Okay.
Maybe it's a bit late in the day, but it's better late than never. We need to talk about this thing, and we need to put the things in perspective, because we can't continue on this tangent.
I will draw a dictation soon, and the GPCC president, and I know Perez Chapo is part of GPCC.
Yes.
Talk about something. He said, well, I cannot directly deal with the matter because the man and the church we're talking about is not within our fold. I'll be talking about regulation as was proposed by himself too, but let me come to Sheikh. Sheikh, obviously not very good news for anybody to be told that this year you won't live beyond that period. But there's a question that's on the minds of many. Are there prophets in Islam? Can they foretell the future?
One of the key pillars of Islamic faith is belief in prophets.
Really?
Yes. For you to have faith, there are 6 pillars of Islamic faith. And one of them is believing in the prophets. But prophets, as in those that God has selected and given them revelations for the guidance of mankind across dispensations. So that's why you find the Muslim will believe in Christ, the Muslim believe in Moses, David, Abraham. All these are prophets. But according to Islamic belief, such prophets as are selected by God to be given revelation for the guidance of man came to an end with the advent of the Prophet Muhammad.
Oh, I see.
So after him,
there
are no prophets. So
prophets.
Post the Prophet Muhammad, there are no prophets in Islam.
Okay.
But that, it doesn't also mean communication from the divine and human community has broken completely.
Oh, okay.
Yes, there's a way by which God still continues. And there are righteous people, saints who have grown in their spirituality, and God can make communications with them through intuition, through inspiration, through what we call spiritual disclosure, and all those things. So those things do not make one a prophet in Islam, but by your in-depth spiritual insight, God can speak to you. In fact, ordinary people can even have dream, which is a means by which God communicates. Can have a dream, something can happen. So what do you do about it? Yeah, it can happen. Islam holds that.
That's interesting, because the reaction of the young people to this particular issue made many fear. So what really is the point? Are they saying there can't be prophecies like that? Are they worried about the words that were used in this prophecy and the impact it's likely to have on such a prominent and eminent person like the chief imam in this particular case? Do you think it's because of the position of Islam on modern day prophets, as they are known and called, or prophets? Or was it because this is a Christian saying something about the chief imam that the people conducted themselves that way? Obviously, there might have been a trigger to your mind and your experience in the Islamic faith. What could have triggered this reaction?
I think that chief imam within the larger Muslim space, and if you like, even the country has grown so large.
That's true.
Is one of the most revered people in this country, and I feel excited that even Christians, revere him a lot. Just this afternoon, I received a call from Archbishop Pamabakal, who calls him my father, and he tells me I should tell him he's praying for him.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and I said I will do that. So there are those who feel so loyal to the chief imam, and anything that happens to his person, they feel as if it is to them.
I see.
Yeah, and though some of them are quite far away from him, he does not know them. Like exactly what happened today. Is it yesterday?
Yesterday, yeah.
Yes, exactly. When I heard it, what I did, I was in a meeting. I had to rush down and inform him that this is what has happened, seeking his mandate to talk on the issue anytime I'm called. Yeah. And he gave me a mandate to talk, to distance himself from those acts of wanton destruction and vandalism that took place at the property or the site of the church, for example. So I think it is not because they don't believe in prophets or they don't they have a certain misgivings about
Prophecies.
all that they are looking at, they are seeing it. In my view, this is a Christian pastor who is pronouncing the death of somebody they hold so dear, and they feel in that as a certain denigration.
I see.
Yeah, and that's how they feel, and they have gone to do that. But that is contrary to the Islamic procedure and principles, respect to response whenever there's any provocation.
So that's what I seek to explore, but I'll come back to you on that. Apostle, the thing, of course, before we moved over, the call for regulation, because, I mean, for a second, we cannot say that people should not prophesy. We cannot say that they should not tell the people that God has spoken to them about what God says. First, the proposal by the GPCC is that, well, let's try and get you to speak to the person. So if I have prophecy about Sheikh, I come to Sheikh and say, Sheikh, this is what God tells me to tell you. This is not public announcement. It's not on YouTube. It's not on Facebook. It's not something that everybody has to be exposed to in this case. And the second point that I just explored with him was some form of regulation. So, for example, if the people have said this were under the umbrella grouping GPCC, perhaps they could have been called and told, please, this is not how we conduct ourselves. Is it time we insist on these groups coming under umbrella bodies and being properly regulated?
I mean, Raymond, I'm not going to say anything different from what the good professor said.
Okay.
I agree entirely that there is need for some sort of regulation, in the sense that as the years go by, things are not getting any better.
Yeah.
And we see it happen year in, year out. And only God knows where this thing can lead us to one day. And so the call for regulation is in the right direction. However, like you rightly said, you can't regulate
and not infringe on religious freedom. And that's where the difficulty really is.
Yes, you can't regulate what God tells me.
Yes.
Putting people under an umbrella, I think it's very, very necessary at this point that something of a sort is done. Now, in doing so...
And they'll raise a concern that there's freedom of association.
Yes, freedom of association.
I can decide not to be part of your grouping. I still operate independently.
I think that we can find some point of convergence somewhere.
I see.
And there should be a way out. You know, as our leaders think about it, there should be a way out. But you see, for me, the greatest regulation one can have is for the individual himself who gives those prophecies to be a bit attentive to his instincts and to be mindful of the fact that you can't go out there, speak to people who are out of your space. If I came to your church and you called me and told me whatever you want to tell me, I came. But for somebody, like we usually say in our local parlance, sitting is somewhere, then you fire missiles or whatever, that you are going to die at this time. You will die, you will have an accident. This will happen to you, and this will happen. I mean, at some point, what are we thinking? And from one of my concerns has always been for we, the general public, as well.
I see.
And I think that to a very large extent, our society has contributed to the magnification of some of the things we are seeing today. And right, like you're rightly telling the professor, even elections in Ghana now seem to be determined by prophecy and no more votes.
Yeah. And even before the elections, I mean, they telling that this man is going to win. And another person saying that this one is going to win. And I have not heard a single time in this country where the prophets have agreed on who's going to win the election.
Yes.
And supposedly coming from the same God.
I feel sad as a Christian when some of these things play out, because our God is not a confused God.
Okay.
All right. Our God is not a confused God. You know, the bit of the human nature interfering or somehow mixing up with God's communication with us is very, very high. But you see, I heard one preacher say just before the past elections that the reason why we vote is because God gives each and every one of us a will to decide what you want. Is that okay? Yeah. That is not to say that God doesn't speak to people. But when God speaks to people, there are things, Raymond, I can tell you in confidence.
That's true.
There are things I can tell you, so you pray about it. But some of the things we say in public, what is there? What do we seek to achieve?
But
so that everybody will know that.
Question. Can I disobey God when he says say it in public? Or you think God will not ask me to say this
But
in
you
public?
see, anytime God tells you to say something in public,
Yeah.
the effect will be there and everybody will know that God
It's for
indeed
public
spoke
good.
to you. Yeah, it's for public good.
But to be clear, the President of the Republic of Ghana, the Vice President, and the National Chief Imam, these are public figures.
But Raymond, you know that the Bible also
It
teaches
is also in
us-
my interest to try and pray for them
Yes.
if their life is being threatened in any way.
Yes. So it is also important for us to note that the Bible already commands us, before prophecy, before any individual will give a prophecy,
Okay.
that we are to pray for all those who are in authority.
I see.
So there is that injunction from the Bible already that we need to pray for people in authority, whether you believe in them, whether you agree with them. Now, the National Chief Imam, for example, like he rightly said, he's a national figure. You may not believe in his religion, but whether you like it or not, this is a revered man.
Yeah.
And these are people in authority. If, God forbid, if something happens to him today, whether you believe, whether you're a Muslim or not, somehow, all of us will feel it.
Yeah, that's true.
That a hero is gone. You get what I'm saying? The president, you may believe in his party, you may agree with his party, his politics or not. But these are national figures that the Bible says pray for all those in authority, whether they are Christians or not. And again, the Bible teaches us how we should relate to the elderly and people in authority. For example, the Bible tells us you don't rebuke an elderly person publicly. You don't speak of elderly people or people in authority anyhow in public. Now, if we are to even go by the Bible and even have a word, for example, people talk about King David receiving a rebuke, a prophecy rebuking him from the prophet Nathan.
In the open.
No, but the prophet went to him
Okay.
and told him that, King David, you have done this, that, and because of that, God says this. He did not go and stand on rooftops and say that King David had committed adultery. And so this is what is going to happen.
But there's the other argument that mostly churches are in closed areas. I'm before my church members.
Yes.
But because of social media and other things, what I said before, let's say, a gathering of 1,000 might be heard by everybody out there. Is that not a challenge in this case? Because, I mean, to be fair, I might have called you in the church to speak to you, but it's all over the place because by some arrangement, technology is all over the place.
Let me state once again.
Yeah.
I believe in prophecies.
Yeah.
I believe in prophets. Like I said before, I gave you scriptural reference to the fact that prophets are needed today just as if they were needed yesterday. For us, it was the coming of Jesus that introduced the fivefold ministry of the prophets, the evangelists, the apostles, the pastors, and the teachers. So we believe in prophets. In our church, the Ghana Pentecostal Council, there are prophets who are part of them and everything. So the ministry of the prophet, for us as Christians, we don't underestimate it at all.
Has that mandate changed? Has the role of the prophet in those days changed from the role of the prophet now?
You see, you need to, that's why I said at the beginning that we need to understand dispensations.
Okay.
So in the dispensation of the Old Testament, the nation Israel was a theocratic had a theocratic rule.
Yeah.
So they received divine instructions, and that was what they were guided by.
I see.
In our dispensation, it's no more theocracy.
We are a
We are a
democracy.
secular state.
Yes.
Apart from being a democracy, we are a secular state where the Constitution of Ghana allows all sorts of religions. Diversity of religion. And so we should understand that. So if you were in the day of Moses, Moses could go and come back and say that God says everybody should sleep at 6 o'clock. And there was no doubt as to which God we were talking about.
Or whose God?
Or whose God we are talking about.
Okay.
In our dispensation, in the New Testament, where we have a secular state, if I came and I said that, Raymond, God says we should close this program, is it my God?
The Islamic God.
Only when your God agrees with the producer that may happen.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So, and God, don't let us forget, don't make it look as if God doesn't understand the space in which we live. And it's as if God is so abstract. God lives with us.
Okay.
God ushers us into so many things. And so in doing all these things, we should understand that our God is not the author of confusion. Our God can never be the author of confusion, where he says this and says that at this point and brings us, or confuses all of us at some point. So please let us understand the prophecy or the role of the prophet in the New Testament is very, very strict in the Bible. We are to edify. Okay. We are to encourage. We are to Correct. And that is what the Bible also does. So I believe in prophecy. I give prophecy. But we should also be careful. Prophecy doesn't put fear in us. Any prophecy that comes to put fear in you, especially not because you've done anything wrong, you are just there, then Raymond, you are just living your life, then you are going to die. Then I go announce it on TV.
It's a lot of torture. I mean, for those who have not been, because being told they're going to die, mindful of course, I mean, somebody like the chief imam is old. He's seen the best of life. Yeah. But even for that, people will have to react because they will be offended within their hearts. They'll be worried for them. Now, forgive me, but let me come to you, Sheikh. The question about regulation of religion, this comes up consistently whenever these issues are being brought up. One, there's freedom of religion. On the other side, there's freedom of association. So I can go to whichever church or whichever religious organization that I want to go to. But when the conduct of people within the space seem to either threaten the larger group or become a big problem for the grouping, how do we deal with it? Regulation or let it pass? In fact, the Rwandan example has been cited. Just make sure that before the person practices as a person in a field, they are qualified educationally to do that. I don't know if that's going to be the solution, but how do we regulate this space if we ought to regulate it?
The conduct of religion does not take place in the space. Okay. It takes place within the space of human existence. Mm-hmm. And especially when we are a community of diversity. And within the same space, all of us are also expressing and giving manifestation to our faith.
Okay.
The potential for clashes of a certain nature necessitates a certain kind of regulation.
I get you.
So what the Constitution has done as a nation in diversity is to grant you the freedom, one, to uphold a certain religion, two, to give you the right to manifest. But that Constitution does not give you the right to abuse the right of another person. Now, so if we see, in our experience, the tendency for religious functionaries to violate rights, to disturb order of society, that is when the order of society must, because normally you would have expected the religion itself to be that which assists state in ordering the life of people. But so if religion fails to do so, then the laws of the land will have to now set the parameters of action. So if you ask me whether there's a need for regulation, I have said somewhere that first we have to look at what we consider as self-regulatory systems.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the Muslim community, the Christian community, we are all operating. We have seen certain excesses. How do we deal with it within the confines of our own community?
That's true.
The difficulty I see is that, like you said, I mean, joining a particular society is something which is done by right.
That's true.
No one can compel. So one person said, I will not join. And so we have the independent churches, one-man church or independent church who is doing his own thing. How do you regulate him? He doesn't belong to any association. But if you take the Christian Council, for example, or if you say the Ghana Muslim Mission, the Federation of Muslim Councils, for example, then this is a body that allows an opportunity for people to be regulated in terms of their actions. But if one sets out that he doesn't belong to A or B, and yet he is also given the opportunity to operate, who regulates him? He is a one person who is doing it. That is where, for such people, external regulation becomes so necessary.
Okay, but I need to take a break, forgive me, but when I come back from the break, we shall be having a conversation on what really the religious space has been like for the past couple of years. And going forward, how do we stem these reactions that get people needlessly agitated? And before I actually would go for the break, I need to say that one individual has actually turned himself in, one of those who allegedly were there to destroy the properties of Bishop Rev.Bempah in this case. After the break, we'll continue our conversation up front. You welcome back. This is Upfront. My name is Raymond Akwa. So my conversation today is about the prophetic ministry in this country and now it's running, especially on the heels of recent happenings at the God's Word ministry headed by the Bishop Rev.Bempah after the 31st night prophecies and the reaction to the particular one. As I did say before I went on break, one individual has turned himself in as one of those who attacked the the premise of Mr. Rev.Bempah's institution. Some say it is his church. Others are also arguing that the residents were attacked in some way. The police are taking note of the individual. They are investigating this particular person and the people who could have been part of their engagement. But see, what we are trying to do is not narrow down the single incident. We're trying to have a broader, bigger conversation on whether or not the space is being encumbered by the right people and what the right things are being done on the religious front. And of course, religion is a big deal, so it is murky how you deal with it. Just that we want to know going forward, we can have peace and we will not have any threats from the religious spaces. Before I go, let me read a couple of your messages that you put on our Facebook page, especially on our live broadcast. Abdul Salam says, Islam is knowledge and knowledge is logic. Smith upon said, I'm a Christian, but I really admire Sheikh on the submissions that he puts up there. And this one says, why don't they just pray for the people without having to say it to everybody? And this one says, we need to stand up as youth and clear all these kind of things out of the way. And that's from Eric Asamoah. Sadiq says, after this program, we'll make you the national prophet. Not me, I mean, I don't qualify, but I'm sure maybe he is more likely qualified to be in that particular position. And there's a Bible quote from Oramos and Apia Kusi says, why Ghana police sat and watched these radicalism anyway? Cool ceremony within democratic society. And there's also another one from Ponsajan. What they say is not what they practice. This is what Ponsajan is saying. Sadiq General says, why is it that Germany has no prophets? The question I don't and okay, this one says Bishop Rev.Bempah is an invisible or Delta Force prophet. Well, I can't ascertain that. And this one says, where is the president? He hasn't been seen since Rawlings took his job on the 31st December 2018. Well, those are the things that have been said on our Facebook page, but I need to come to the studios because this conversation must move further from there. So we've been talking about regulation. We've been seeking to find out whether we can draw a line between people's religious freedoms and their rights to association and the need to regulate that particular space. It's always been thorny. This is a message that was sent me by Captain Infojo. Captain Infojo is in Ho, I understand, and he's actually watching this. Captain Infojo in the PNDC era was actually the spokesperson of the PNDC. He did a lot of media interaction too for them. In fact, they called the media liaison person. He says, we tried, and by we, meaning the PNDC, tried to regulate religious groups in the country during the PNDC regime. So we had a religious affairs secretariat. As we speak, there's a ministry for that particular purpose. Should we expect the ministry to step in and say that there's executive power to regulate so we can do that from that perspective? Apostle?
I think it's going to be a collaboration of all the major stakeholders.
Okay.
As in, government obviously will have to play some role. The Christian community, the Muslim community, and other religions coming together to see to what extent is this thing going. And if we talk about regulation, what exactly do we mean by regulation? And how do we make it practical? How do we make it work? Because like we are seeing now, once there is problem anywhere because of religion, the government is not free. All the parties involved definitely would have to do one thing or the other. Case in point, we are sitting here today having to discuss this because there is some unrest somehow on the front of religion. Yeah. So I think that it has to be a very serious collaboration between government and all the other stakeholders involved. The point we all agree on is that there definitely has to be some regulation. Okay. No two ways about that. However,
where to start from?
The issue is where to start from, who to do it. How do we make sure we don't make it conflict with the freedoms and rights of people, freedom of association, freedom of religion, and all those other things? That is where we are concerned. I wanted to say something before, you went on a break. Still talking about the regulation. One of the points I think that we need to make clear is that in talking about regulation, self-regulation is very, very important. However, the followers of Christianity or other religions, we must also know that we have a right to choose what we want to hear.
I see.
if you always want to go to a place where you are told things that scares you to the bone, and you keep going, then probably there is something fundamentally wrong. Because most of these people are bound with fear. Because, I mean, you go somewhere.
You told you would die.
Beginning of the year, first day of the year, starting the year, and you hear about 20 or 30 prophecies of death. I mean, just before I came here, I was going through the online portals.
Yeah.
And almost every single portal, one prophecy after the other. And for all the prophecies, doom. It's either about death, it's either about accidents, fire outbreak, somebody, and the only good ones, there are disagreements about it. One said Ghana will win the AFCON, the other said Ghana will not win, and so on and so forth. So for me, my problem is a nation that is struggling to develop. And to even start a year, we start on this note. How do you develop like this? So even before you start the year, you already have it at the back of your mind that something bad will happen.
The question about why are there no prophets in Germany is it a legitimate question? There are someone saying that there's an inverse relationship between the development of the state and their attachment to religious groupings and to some extent the prophetic ministry.
You see, if you study history,
yes,
a little, and religious history or the history of Christianity, you will know that a lot of these countries used to have strong Christian foundation.
At some point, they abandoned them. They
abandoned them.
In fact, when they got wealthier, they decided to reject them.
That's exactly what I was going to say, that most of these countries abandoned their Christian principles when they got wealthier. And I think that is not the best for us because, look, when you go to some of those countries today, they are wealthy in terms of, social amenities and finances and all of that. But in terms of their lifestyle, it's becoming a problem.
I see.
Check all these things coming up, this deviant lifestyles and all these things. They are becoming the proponents of some of these lifestyles. And so I think that Christianity is good for us as a nation. Ghana, the last census showed that we have majority Christians, and I want it to be so.
Who profess, people who profess to be Christians don't care whether they practice Christianity.
Well, but
they profess to be Christians.
That is until we go to heaven, we can't tell.
That is an interesting one. But that question, I'm asking, yes, please round up.
But in rounding up, I think that Christianity is good for us.
Yeah.
Look, but for Christianity, there are lots of people who are hopeless, who used to be hopeless in life and who wouldn't have had any foundation. And let me even broaden it up to say that religion in itself have helped us as a nation.
That's true.
Look, a lot of the things we see today is because of religion. For example, you even talk about school, our educational system and stuff like that. If not for Christianity and some of the mission schools we see around, where would we have been by this time? Even hospitals. There are places today in Ghana where government have no hospitals, government can't send doctors, but you see churches sending doctors, sending missionaries and stuff there. So we can't downplay the role and the impact of Christianity on us as a nation. If Germany do not have prophets, but we cannot say that there are no prophets in Germany, because in every single nation of the world today, there are people who still call upon the name of the Lord. And so just that, well, I'm sure they do this differently from what we do. I'm not sure they prophesy so much death like we are doing, but I believe it's going to change very soon.
Well, I'm coming to you finally, Sheikh. That question ought to be answered one way or the other. Are we so religious that we are fanatically religious people? That's why we react the way we react to some of these prophecies and all the other places. Because if you are well off, if you don't have a terrible education system that requires that you have to pray very hard before you go and write your exams, if you don't have a terrible health system that requires that even getting a bed, you require some serious prayers and you need to be healed before you get to the hospital because you may not even get a doctor to take care of you. If your health system is working, if your economy is working, will there come a time where we will no longer need religion the way we need it today? Because it's filling a gap of hopelessness and giving hope to people. Is it also being exploited? That's what I want to find out from you.
Well, that is the reductionist, theory about the relevance of religion. I mean, when science came up and they thought that because science has developed, technology has developed, one day,
we'll get rid of religion.
But as we move on in life, religion still is occupying the space in people's life. But I think the most important question that we need to that deals with the matters that in front of us is this regulation thing.
Yeah.
You see, the state comes in as an external force to regulate, when it becomes necessary. One, when religion is used as a tool for manipulation,
okay,
when religion is used as a tool to incite people, if the religion becomes a tool for human rights violation, you know, if religion becomes the means by which we disturb the peace of our country, if religion becomes the tool by which we preach hate in a country, these are the reasons why it becomes necessary. So if practitioners are unable to self-regulate, then the state needs to come in and set certain limits and say that as a sheikh, I cannot sit on your station here now and declare jihad and say, look, see, because of what has happened, go to every church and set it ablaze, and when you see any pastor, behead him. The law.
That's a criminal.
That's a criminal. And this is where, though I'm a Muslim, yes, but Ghana's constitution is not telling me not to be Muslim, but Ghana's constitution insists that I must promote peace, not to destroy the country. So the external regulation then becomes necessary.
Gentlemen, I'm pleased to have you today. My time is up. And folks, thank you so much for joining us in today's edition of UPfront. My name is Rev.Bempah.